Hey guys, me again, it's Chris from Broken WRC. I wanted to do a quick little thing on radios, just as a proviso. I don't know. Basically, long time ago, way back when, Brian Parker started the G6 out in Reno, and then he was also hosting the West Coast Championships for Axial up at Cisco Grove Campground in Cisco Grove. It's out here in the Sierras. Anybody's been to Axel Fest for like more than a couple times, loved Cisco Grove. It was a great little campground. Everybody kind of meet. It was right off the 80 and had all kinds of crazy. It was actually there was a off-road trail. Was it Fordyce? I think Fordyce Trail dumped right into Cisco Grove. And so it was a big 4x4 hangout, and there's a lot of tons of videos and stories about that, and it was great. Back in the early days of when 2.4 gigahertz came on the scene, obviously at the time I ended up getting a Spektrum radio. Like this guy. This has been painted by me. It's not. It didn't come this way. It's my funky camo edition. It's basically, it was a 3-channel. You ended up. I put a little toggle switch from Radio Shack in here for the dig unit, which is fun. This is like the old shafty stuff. This is a long time ago. Anyway, we would get these together, and I think it was a start when they just kind of came up with like DSM, which had a lot of problems in the beginning. These were actually kind of cool radios, but they didn't have hardly any model memory in them. You know, you ran maybe 1 or 2 trucks tops, if I remember right. This one's dead. This one won't even fire up. Anyway, at Cisco Grove, you had this place called the Dust Bowl. It was basically a big old, not really a football field, but like a soccer field. And this is way up in the Sierras, so it's like everything's dusty. And this place was like between the main road and the campground, part of the campground. And it was this big shallow area. And that's where the booths were and the MC, and you had your driver's meeting there and everything else. And everybody would like line up their trucks and then, put the radio on top of the trucks. And a lot of guys would fire them up, would turn on, well, back then, you had like a half-hour driver's meeting before you took off. Everybody took off at the same time. It wasn't like Axial Fest of last year or the year before, where it was all open trails. You started at a particular time, just like a race, just like any kind of RC event. So you had a bunch of guys there, and they wouldn't turn on the radio. They just kind of dump the radio in the truck so they save batteries and whatnot. And, this is the driver's meeting and get all amped up, and everybody turn the radio on at once. And about a quarter of them would lock onto the receiver. So you couldn't get, it was this weird, I've heard of 2.4 before that, not, communicating with the receiver. But like in my case, I had to pick the truck up and go out by the highway and then fire it up, and it was far enough away that I could get a signal and start the truck. It was crazy. I was like, because everything 2.4 was sold as like infallible and all this kind of stuff. And anyway, long story short, Spektrum, not because of that particularly. I'm sure there are lots of, I've heard of guys like running in parking lots that have like a chain link fence around them, and the 2.4 would like kind of flip out. Spektrum didn't have a lot of range back then either, like the early stuff like this. But same could be said for, I want to say New Bright. It's not New Bright. This is the other radio manufacturers. Probably Futaba never had this problem. maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, long story short, they came out with this guy. This is a very well-loved DX4 Sport. And actually, this has a wheel adapter on it that I picked up from Harley back when he was on RC Crawler. And it was actually one of his first 3D printed things. And paid for that, and you could put like in my case, like a rally wheel on there, and obviously you can reach that with your thumb. And it was just kind of fun, and you can, change the wheel up. It's not a big deal, and it's been, this one's been sticker bombed, so just mostly that's because you had so many people at an event. You don't want to lose your radio, so it kind of helped identify it. And yeah, that was it. Had a Tamiya, put a Tamiya thing on here for a lanyard. You could put it like a little claiming lanyard on it, and then hang it around your neck if you needed to, that kind of thing. And this came. Let's see if I fire this up. This thing came with a lighted LED screen, and you had a little indicator for your radio. It's got a little bit of an antenna bump, but not much. And anyway, had a button on here if you needed to see it. Because back then we were doing a lot of night trails, which sounds familiar. And this thing worked, and it was awesome. I mean, and not only that, you'd put a set of batteries in it, like 4 AA's, and they would last the entire weekend, and maybe the next weekend after that. I mean, before you hit LVC or anything, because these things love to sit there and bark at you if they get, the battery gets too low. I was amazed. It's just this is the best radio that I ever came across. And radios are kind of like choosing a family in a weird way, because obviously I had I don't know, I think it's like 10 or 20 model memory on this thing. Not anything exciting, but I definitely don't have 10 or 20 models, so it's not a big deal. But I would, this thing was great, and I heard they had a 5-channel radio coming out, so I'm like, oh, cool. And I ended up with one of these. The DX5 Rugged. Rugged. And I remember all the ads. I don't know if you guys remember, but, all the ads of, like, they had some dork out by a stream, and he loses it in a stream, and, there's everybody. It's like one of those as seen on TV ads, like those little Bronco ads, has this happened to you? And the guy's like dunking it in the water and everything else. All of that was complete bullshit. Yeah, got the Rugged, and that was their big thing. It was just weird to me because it was sold. It had the little baby bumpers on it. Had the lanyard on top, the little rubber lanyard thing, which lasted about, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds. I ended up just cutting it off. I've had to put a half tube of silicone on it just to keep these stupid baby bumpers on the thing. Ergonomically, it's a good radio. I mean, it feels comfortable in the hand. This is like one of the, not the first, but it's, one of the first time they had a little thumb wheel on there, and that's cool. It's very, it's real easy to handle. It's accessible for me pretty easily. And then this bar, I replaced it with a piece of stock aluminum. I actually have one that's about an inch thick that I made to put a GoPro on. And that never really took off anyway. But, it was just kind of, I don't know. I mean, I have an intense love-hate relationship with this thing. It's the first generation, so it's before they didn't even change it, but I guess they improved the software on this, what used to be just a simple dial. Now it has this dumb thing. But at $230 a pop, I don't know. I'm constantly perplexed with this thing. It has improvements to the software. Well, not really. I mean, it's the same. The DSM-2 software is nice. It's a solid connection. I can't complain about the software. My only complaint with this is not even so much the style. I really don't mind the style at all. It's the marketing that got into it. And then shortly after, they were bought by Horizon, and before you know it, they're making they're licensing all kinds of other electronics, which is fine. I don't know. I haven't heard of anything terribly bad about the electronics. But the radios, when they just did radios, that's when you had kind of groundbreaking stuff like this guy. And it hasn't been a lot of improvement since, which is fine because this works. But yeah, the thing about radios, that's why I make this video, okay? If you're just starting out, everything today is radio runs, which is fine. But unless you have a bunch of kids and, it's maybe just you or, you're the only one in the family interested in this stuff, having after a while, if you're really one of those like me that got sunk in the 80s and, you end up being a lifer. Well, it's kind of important to have one radio after a while because not only that, I'm used to this radio. I was so used to this radio, this became like second nature to me. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but the ergonomics, everything else made sense. And this, ergonomically, I don't have a big problem transferring that knowledge. You know what I mean? It didn't take long to get used to it. Just the thumb wheel, that kind of thing. Not a big deal. The weight isn't bad, but the software didn't have any changes, but for some reason it uses up batteries twice as fast as the DX4, which is bizarre to me because, for one thing, when they came out with this radio, running trails at night is really, really popular, and for some reason it has no LED. It has zero. I don't think the new version has it either. There's no option for an LED. So in like poor light or, that kind of thing, this thing is hard to read. It really doesn't show up very well. And I don't understand how this could have a backlight on it, but this one doesn't. And this is the new version. And you're paying $230, $240 for it. That to me that's what drives me crazy. As far as receivers go, I mean, like, I bought a SCX6. Obviously, I got home and I made sure everything ran with the Ready to Run radio. But switching it over is not a big deal. It had a 5-channel receiver in it. Changing it over was a breeze. Even I just changed over my UDR, and that had, this Traxxas radio, I just no likey. It just never caught on with me. I can't, hold on to this thing for very long. It's kind of a pain in the butt. You could probably put a wheel on there and reach it with your thumb, but when you compare it, I don't know. I don't know if it's the distance between the wheel and the trigger or what. I have a hard time. You can't one-hand this thing. Not that you want to drive a UDR one-handed, but anyway, long story short, receiver used to be not that much money. Of course, now they're, I put it like a 2 or 3 channel receiver in it in the UDR, which is not that bad. Is at least under $40, I think. But, obviously the last year or so, since the pandemic, everything's gone up and inflation and yada, 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 especially electronics. So we're kind of at the point. I'd like to get a new radio. Futaba has got some great options, and they're you can go real high quality or not so high. Well, that's not the right thing to say. But when I buy a Spektrum, it's pretty much the receivers are going to work pretty much across the board unless you have an air radio or a stick radio. That might be a little different. I don't think so. But anyway, if you get a surface receiver, it's going to work on a surface radio, and that's fine. I'm just saying when you buy a radio, you're kind of buying into a system, and it's not so much there's a lot of radios out there that I really want, but when you think about it, it's like, well, okay, how much do the receivers cost? And are they going to be around in some time? And that kind of thing. So you're kind of, it's everything's an investment nowadays. Not that it's worth anything to resell, but it's something that you're going to be using a lot. And there's a lot of decision making on the user end, which would be me, on what I'm going to like or dislike on a radio. And the more you figure out what you like and dislike, obviously that's going to make a difference down the road to where you spend your dollars. And I've been lucky to be able to quasi afford this hobby over the years, but I definitely don't. But I had to do it. It's a learning process, and you have to figure out things you want to spend your money on, and things you kind of have to spend your money on, that kind of thing. And over the years, I get better chargers and that, but literally not every year. I kind of make things go a little, because I never really made that much. I have a lot invested in tools now, but it's taken me, 30 freaking years playing with this junk. So, anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Just my lousy opinion, like the thumbnail says. And I just wanted to, kind of give you guys a heads up if you're thinking about a certain radio. God, I can't. My memory. I got to make cards before I do these videos. But there are other manufacturers, obviously, that, there's Radio Link. I think the cheaper brands, you're not doing, unless you're doing speed runs, that kind of thing. This will work over various distances, obviously. I can run bashers and crawlers. I mean, crawlers is not even really an issue. Although, you want to get a lockdown signal, but it's not like I'm going to lose control of the vehicle, that kind of thing. You start doing speed runs, it's a little bit different story. I need to invest in like a Futaba or something, much higher end. And obviously, if you're racing, your reaction times, the signal times, I think I said that right. Reaction times on the radio between your radio and receiver is going to, if you're racing, you want the quickest guy on the block, basically. And I'm old. I can't race. I can race to the bathroom. That's about it. Just saying. So yeah, it's worth the time to research this stuff. And I don't know why. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'll stop saying for one thing. I hopefully get some more videos going. It's the holidays are over. Plus, here in California, we've gotten, I think our last storm, we got 4 inches in a day. So the coming out of about a 10-year drought. So it's getting really wet out here, and the reservoirs and stuff where we usually run the crawlers are sort of not available right now, but they could be. It's 1 week at a time. It's winter time. What are you going to do? So there's not a lot of running out there. But yeah, I've got other projects in the works. I'll probably share that. So anyway, I hope you guys have a good one. And thanks for listening. And we'll catch you on the next one.